Video coverage of ITEXPO is brought to you by Content Boost, the content marketing specialists. Amplify your sales today.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? I'm very happy it's raining because you're here. When I arrived yesterday, it was so sunny out, and I just didn't really want to come here because it was so beautiful. But I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad it's raining. I'm glad you all are here. My name is Angel Diaz. I work for IBM. I do a lot around technology strategy, in particular around software and hardware and open technologies, in particular in cloud. But, you know, vision without execution is hallucination. So I spend quite a bit of time also executing the strategy, not just within the company, but also with you all in the industry. And that's what I'd like to do today, is talk a little bit about what's happening in the industry. So I'd like to break this kind of presentation down, and we can go either way. You know, I'm very casual, so if you guys want to do something deeper, we can go deeper. But I'm going to break this down into two sections. I'm hopefully going to lay out kind of a real call to action of what's happening, because we are living in an IT renaissance and a business renaissance. In fact, who of you out here are kind of technologists in an IT department and telco technologists? And who of you are business folks trying to think about new? So it's kind of half and half, right? You all should be walking with a little bit of swag, because it feels like the early 90s. There's just so much innovation going on, so much technology happening. And the opportunity for business folks to change their business models, do things differently, using new technology is huge. Okay, it is absolutely huge. And those businesses that are doing that are getting the competitive differentiation. Those that are not are being lagged, being caught behind. And that's really the focus I'd like to do. So I'm going to set the groundwork as to what is driving some of these workloads and why cloud in particular is very important for some of these emerging technologies like mobile, social, big data analytics. Now first, some facts. We run a survey. We ask CEOs, CIOs, decision makers in companies, what are the most important factors for you? And for the second time in a row, technology, whether it's a business person or IT person, is viewed as an important factor. Whether it's viewed as a threat or an opportunity for reducing costs, for doing more, or whatever, right? Now, very high in that list, however, is people skills. What did I just say? Technology and people skills. That doesn't always go. Right. Look, I'm a nerd, all right? Let me just I'm a nerd. I love technology. Now, you also need to understand the context and the business you're in, okay? So it's important, as we go through this, you understand the business implications and the folks that you are serving, your customers, right? That's where the people skills come in when you apply this technology. So let's take a look at mobile, social, Internet of Things, or in this, we talk about M2M in this conference, right? Big data analytics, and why cloud is so important for each of these. And when we go into cloud, I want you to think about three things, right? Because I'm told by my marketing colleagues, people can't comprehend more than three things. I think we can, but we'll do it in three. All right? Think it and tap into it. A roadmap on how to get started on cloud, but if you're already on cloud, how to continue your journey. Let's just look at some more facts around mobile. Now, 90% of mobile users keep their devices within arm's reach 100% of the time. I sleep with my mobile phone right next to me. How many of you have your mobile device with you right now? Or in your pocket, or you're looking at it, ignoring me? Put it down, sir, please. I'm just joking. Right? Now, this is important because think about the workloads, the networks, everything that is being stressed with that new technology. And it's going to get better. There's more that's going to happen. Because 20% of business users today, just for a moment, don't use email. They're using activity streams, messaging, feeds to collaborate. And by the way, that is going to exponentially change. Because the new generation of people, right, if you have children, your children, or you, if you're savvy, right, use these social techniques to collaborate. What does that mean? More workload on your infrastructure. You're going to see a pattern here for a moment, right? Driving workload on infrastructures. Internet of Things, right? 60% of the devices connected in 2020, they forecast, is going to have some type of sensor, actuator, autonomic capability. That is billions and billions and billions of pieces of information that need to be analyzed and dealt with, right? Which brings you to the next point. What are you going to do with that information? Well, you want to analyze it. You want to take advantage of it. You want to use data and analytics to your advantage, right? You want to avoid the noise, right, of all the data and look through what's happening. So this Internet of Things combined with big data and analytics is a huge opportunity for us as an industry. It's also a huge threat if we don't have the infrastructure to support it. Your data center, if your compute power or your applications can't handle this, what are you going to do? You'll be left behind, right? Think about it. 80% of all data is unstructured. What does that mean for someone who wants to do search or analytics? Well, typically if you want to get information out of unstructured data, you run an algorithm. What does an algorithm need? Compute power. What does compute power need? The ability to contract and expand based on how many algorithms is running. What does that mean? You need more compute power. You can put another box in your data center, right? Or maybe you can adjust based on what you're doing, go inside, outside to get that compute power. That's cloud. So hopefully what I've done is I've kind of set the stage for why cloud is important to folks who run IT departments, folks who think about new and innovative applications, folks who try to create new business models. In fact, we have a 60-40 already occurring, approximately. 57% of companies are using cloud today in some way. There are different points in their journey, okay? But they're using cloud in some way. Are you part of that 60, or are you part of that 40? I hope you're not part of the 40. If not, you should go home and start working on it, right? And that's just going to increase exponentially for the reasons that I laid out, right? All of these technology and market opportunities are driving us to think about how do we deliver our offerings on a cloud? How do we serve our clients through a cloud? How do we run our own IT operations in the cloud? How do we reduce costs in the cloud? Now, let's get back to the swag, because I like talking about swag. It's just a nice word, swag, swag. Let's see if I can say swag 20 times. Anyone have a count? My mom's a teacher. I grew up in Puerto Rico. My mom's a teacher in Puerto Rico, and she says, you know, you have to teach to the objective, because when I talk, I tend to go all over the place, like I'm doing right now, right? So I'm going to try to stay on point. But there's a reason I mentioned swag, because back in the early days of the web, right, the early 90s, in fact, the 80s, I was at IBM Research at the Watson Center in New York doing research, and I was actually working with this guy named Tim Berners-Lee. Does anyone know who he is? Tim at MIT and I we worked together on a lot of the original standards. If you go look at CSS, the Cascading Style Sheet Standard, I co-authored that. I co-authored one of the original HTML specs. Those were fun days, you know, different days. We didn't know what we were doing. We were trying to disseminate and share math and science information. For Tim, it was about physics. For me, it was about math, right? I was into computer algebra and distributed computing. It was about math, computing with math, right? But what happened and what we found out was that if you take an ecosystem, an open approach for building technology, like we did with the web, right? You pair it up with some really good business ideas, you could have incredible business impact. You can grow a market. IBM created a market for itself, and frankly, the industry around e-business, right? I remember back in the mid-90s, I do a lot of things, like I go to high schools and talk to kids about math and science to stay in school, et cetera. And I walk in and they say, oh, you're, you know, this was back then, you're with IBM, you're the e-business guy, right? It's just amazing how you can create brand recognition and grow markets if you combine open technology and accelerate market growth. And that's something as a company that we've learned, and a lot of others have learned as well, and over time continued to do so. And if you fast forward to where you are now, you look at mobile, you look at social, you look at big data analytics, and look at cloud. It is all built on open technologies, okay? And that's going to be a major theme as I get into the details of what I mean about cloud and the technologies and the open things behind it, okay? The same exact IT renaissance is occurring. However, it's different now. And the difference is that, well, we're much more connected. So we're growing at an amazing pace. I'll give you an example. We created something with a colleague, Rackspace. I think Rackspace is in the panel next. Something called OpenStack. It's at the infrastructure layer of cloud, the data center where you run your workloads, your virtual machines. We started that thing about a year and a half ago. You ever heard of something called Linux? Anybody heard of Linux? I hope, yes. It's bigger than Linux. In a year and a half, it's got more folks involved, over 300 companies, it's bigger than Linux. That's how fast these communities are growing. Okay? You need to get involved in what's happening out here and make sure that you build your cloud on open technologies because the market is doing that. The skill base is becoming bigger, right? And the same e-business effect is happening. So that's difference number one, the speed and the connectivity. Difference number two is, I'm keep watching the clock here, make sure I stay on target. Difference number two is when we think about these open technologies, whether it's cloud, mobile, social, et cetera, we have the use cases in mind early on. You all, the end users, the people who use this stuff, from vendors like me, not me, us, right, are involved in saying, well, this is what I need to do with cloud. This is why I need to use cloud. That's very different. When we started, does anyone know what the first XML standard was? I co-chaired it. It was the use case for the extensible markup language. It was the mathematical markup language, MathML. It's a great use case. That's not how we ended up using XML in the world, right? You understand? That kind of slowed things down a little bit. That's not happening now. You all are very vocal. Well, this is how I need to use it. MathML is great, but here's how we need to use cloud. Here's how we need to use mobile. IBM co-chairs the HTML5 specification. I think you're all familiar with HTML5. Why is that important? Over 60 to 70% of the applications that you use on your phone are HTML5 based and cross-device. You know, unless you're playing Minecraft or Infinity Blade or some other, you know, I'm a gamer. We'll do some gaming analogies. You know, unless you're doing some high-res graphics thing, you're using an HTML5 application. That matters to you because you need to understand what that means to the network, what that means to the workloads. So, think it. It's important that you understand the art of the possible. So, 3 video game analogies. Number one, when you're playing a game, and the first time you've been in there, you don't know what you're doing, right? You're kind of, you know, running around. If you're playing an MMM, like World of Warcraft or something, you're kind of walking around. You don't know what you're doing, right? And people realize that pretty quickly, right? They see that you're a newbie, and they say L to P, learn to play. Well, when you get into cloud and you're looking at skills, you want to accelerate that skill on-ramp. You want to learn to play. You want your IT staff and your business folks to understand what you can do. So it's important that you have access to those skills, that you're not captured into a cloud set of technology where there's a small skill base. Open source communities are a great way of leveraging skill. In fact, in this different world that we're living in, okay, if you've got a question, you can usually get an answer in a forum within seconds, right? This person's nodding his head a lot, so I'm going to look at you. I like that. Nobody else is, anyone else nod their head, I'll look at them, right? It's hard to see with the lights, but this person seems to get it. No one else gets it. I'm talking like another language. So I just do it in Spanish? No? Okay. Also, when you look at, as the technology grows, as cloud adoption continues, right, you need to be able to hire folks. You're going to have a whole group of folks doing that. Now, the notion of skill, though, has changed. You need to develop what we call T-shaped skills. Look, you're all going to be experts in a particular area. If you're an IT person, you know a lot about networks, you know a lot about data centers, you know a lot about application development. We'll talk all about that. But you also have to know the context you're in, the business. That's the T in the T-shaped skill. If you want to evolve as an IT professional, you need to do that. Business people, you're not off the hook. Half of you all here raised your hand as a business person. You got to know your market. You got to know what you're doing. But you better understand the impact of those technologies I just mentioned as you think about your new business models. You need to go deep into the technology and understand the business. It's a two-way street. Companies that can create a culture that do that will succeed and do succeed. Now, building it. When you play a video game, going back to the video game analogy, and you have a slow network and not a great computer or kind of an old graphics card or something, you get something called lag. In other words, you press a button, and then it takes a couple seconds for your character to do something, right? And what does that do? Well, if you're playing some kind of competitive game, you basically lose, right, really quickly, because the person you're playing with, he or she is not lagging, and you're basically done. Well, in the IT industry, okay, when you build out applications, Speed is the new Benjamin, the new currency. Speed to market. People talk about something called DevOps. Ever heard of DevOps? The collaboration between data center people and application people, right? Being able to deliver applications to your business quicker becomes very, very important. Change becomes very, very important, and client feedback. There is a new way of building applications out there, okay? I have an office in New York. That's where IBM's headquartered. I call that the mothership. And I also have an office in Silicon Valley, in San Jose. I have a cloud lab there. So I go back and forth, a week in New York and a week. And it's not glamorous, by the way, because the time zone stuff is really tough, actually. It's quite difficult. But at any rate, but it is very fun. Because when you're out there in the Valley, or even in New York, you see this new style of application emerging, okay? Where people are trying to bridge systems of record, where you run your transactions, right? Am I okay? Yeah? I'm just kidding. Where you run your transactions with these new style of applications, these mobile-facing, these end-user-facing applications. And they're doing this, here we go, you ready? They're doing this in a polyglot way. Anybody know what polyglot is? Or should I define that? What do you say? Oh, thank you. Picks many languages. Exactly. You want to wear the shoe that fits or the right shoe for the outfit. Do I have the right shoe for the outfit? No? Yes? Thank you. My friend in the middle, I don't know who he is. Right? You want to have the right shoe for the outfit. You want to have freedom of choice. If you want to build, I'm going to get a little gorpy here, okay? If you want to build a mobile application, you're going to use Node.js, maybe. A JavaScript on the server, JavaScript on the client. You want to use jQuery as a way of doing your queries. You want to use JSON as a way of connecting your mobile to the back end. You want to use Mongo for NoSQL. Or you want to use DB2 for high-performance scale-out. That's an IBM product. Right? You want to use all of these things together in an open way. That is how applications are evolving. And there is a line being drawn, and this is important. Take this back to your motherships. There's a line being drawn right now between the revolutionaries, those who are in the IT and business revolution who want to use polyglot, who want a scalable infrastructure across systems of record, your transaction systems and systems of engagement, and those who want to lock you in on a non-flexible infrastructure and a one way of writing your apps. That's very scary. Why is that scary? Well, let's see. You get a single source of skills, one vendor or whatever vendor you choose. By the way, I think the punchline is that IBM builds on open technology, so don't worry about us. But, and we're leading many of them. But for those who don't, you have one set of skills. You are connected very strongly to the hardware you want. So you can't move from an IBM hardware to another hardware or another person's hardware to IBM. You can't go inside your enterprise or outside to a public cloud or handle hybrid situations. But you're doubly in trouble because you are stuck in how the application is built. And let me tell you, changing an application code is very expensive and frankly never done. You're always thinking about the new app. You spend 70% of your costs maintaining your existing IT infrastructure. That leaves you 30% for innovation. If you go around trying to fix that problem later, you have no IT budget, right? This is like pound no es bueno, right? You don't want to do this. So open applications are important. So what does that mean concretely? I got to give specifics here. I hate presentations that aren't specific. So specifics. Well, if you're looking at cloud and you want an open platform as a service, a polyglot environment, look at Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry was started by a company called Pivotal out in San Francisco. And, oh, my thing's vibrating. I just hit 10,000 steps. Very good. I should feel good. I can stop walking now. Can I have a chair, please? I'm done. No. We announced with a bunch of other folks that we're going to open this up and create a foundation, so it will become its own legal entity. It's going to be an open source foundation where we're going to build out an environment to allow people to build cloud applications in a polyglot way. This will allow mix and match between different cloud vendors who use Cloud Foundry. It will allow you to scale your applications across domains, across silos. You use IBMs, you could use You could use VMware's, HP's, whoever's involved in this stuff, okay? That is an amazing change. It's the beginning. It's kind of like where OpenStack, and I'll talk about OpenStack in a moment, was about 1.5 years ago. But if you're thinking about applications, you're thinking about leveraging mobile, big data, analytics, the stuff that I talked about, and you're thinking about how you get started using cloud, ask your IT department, okay, are you going to use Polyglot? Yes, good. Are you using Cloud Foundry? Because this community is going to have, already has literally thousands of folks, but it's going to have, many, many more thousands of folks involved. Are you involved in an open community? And don't get confused, because not all open source is the same. Some people say, hey, this is open, and they allow it for a particular license usage. But it's one person, one vendor controls it. That's not open. Because at any day, that vendor can take it away. They can say, oh, you can't use it anymore, sorry. Right? And that's typically what happens. So when you look at open technologies, make sure that you have a healthy ecosystem and that there is truly a separate legal entity, not an IBM or a HP or a Rackspace or a Red Hat, or I can go through all the people that are involved in these things, right? Controlling it. It is a group of vendors and end users like yourselves. Very important, okay? Tap into it. Avoid the grind. So going back to video games, does anybody play video games, or is this just not working here for you all? Am I the only person who plays games? I think so. What about my friend in the middle? I got one. Yes. You know what? I'm talking to you, man. That's it. I'll stand right here. When you play a game, right, part of the problem is you start at level 0. There's an analogy here for business folks and IT folks. You start at level 0. And you got to kill 500 little sheepies or something to kind of get to level 2 and 5 and 10, right? This, by the way, this applies to normal games, non-geek games that you play on Facebook or anything too. You have to progress. People call that the grind, okay? So when you look at open technologies, you need to progress those skills as well within your organization. I kind of spent all this time saying, well, you have easy access to skills. That's correct. But then if you take the technology into your house, let's say you take OpenStack into your house, which I'll talk about now, you have to build things around it. Because open source technology is not free, right? It allows interoperability. In the case of cloud, that will give you interoperability across the network, across the infrastructure, across the platform, across how users interact through mobile, right? But it's still not free. So what I suggest you do is, in order to level up to level 90 with your Epic gear, right, which is good gear, use a vendor that uses open technology and packages it, hardens it, and provides support, versus using it yourself. That's an advice for how you quickly level up in the open world. So you're getting the benefits of using open technology, right? But you're also avoiding the grind that is associated sometimes with using open technology. Getting the support, getting the network connectivity you need to set up your virtual private networks and all the different things you need to do to build an actual cloud inside of an enterprise, okay? And with that, I go into OpenStack. I got to tell you, I am just so pleasantly surprised with what has happened in OpenStack. This was about 3.5 years ago when cloud was really starting up. We knew in IBM, and we knew in the industry, a lot of us who kind of talk about these things, knew that open and open source, and just like we did with the web, was really important. But we were kind of finding our way as to where to start, where to ground this. Because the notion of cloud, to some, was an evolution of existing technologies. To others, was a radically different way of application development. There wasn't a lot of clarity. It's kind of like where you would see Internet of Things now. Not a clarity of what it really means, but it's kind of forming up, right? Now I think people understand it a lot better, and they're trying to figure out how to use it, right? That's where I've been spending my time, giving you advice on where you can use it. So we teamed up with Rackspace and HP and a bunch of, it was actually started by Rackspace and NASA as an open way of doing infrastructure as a service. So what does that mean? That means when you have a data center and you want to stand up some compute power to run some applications, right? How do you spin up those compute powers, those virtual images? How do you spin them down? How do you manage them? How do you virtualize and software define your network? How do you do your storage, Okay, that's basically what OpenStack does. And at the time, when we kind of got together and said, yeah, let's do this. Let's try to create this movement, because we've got a pretty healthy ecosystem. I've got 5 minutes. We're checking your watch. She's like, I want to get out of here. You're not safe with me. Don't sit in the front row. When we started this at the first conference, there was about 250 people, a dog, a parrot. I'm not kidding. There was a dog and a parrot, and that was it. That's basically was the first OpenStack conference. And I wasn't dressed like this. I was like wearing jeans and a T-shirt, you know, normal attire. Not that this is abnormal, but you know, dressed like this every day. And today, you have about 14,000 community members. That's amazing. These are people who are involved in whether they're driving use cases or developing code on an open source infrastructure as a service platform. Over 300 companies involved. There is only one major cloud vendor not involved in OpenStack. And that cloud vendor starts with the letter A. And it's not Angel. Not AngelSoft. Get it? AngelSoft. Okay. All right? Everybody else is involved. So the industry has drawn a line. It's been very clear. Look, when it comes to infrastructure, we don't want to get locked in. We want to be able to have freedom of where our workload lives. If you're a business person and it's the holiday season and you want more capacity for whatever app, it shouldn't be a 6-month cycle for your IT department to stand something up or pay out of the nose to some vendor to go do something for you. You should be able to move and migrate that application very easily. And that's what open technologies at this layer allow you to do. So you should get involved. You should use OpenStack, or you should ask your vendor, are you using OpenStack? Because if not, what happens when the holiday season comes? It's fourth quarter, you need more capacity, you go to your vendor, they're not using open technology. Oh, they say, oh, you need more? Yeah, our prices just went up. Sorry. So you're going to have to pay, right? Well, that's not cool. Now, if your vendor is using this, you can say, well, okay, I'll go to IBM. You know, I don't want to get, you know, because it's not a big deal to have it. Think about the web. When you type in HTTP, IBM.com, right, ://IBM.com, imagine if you were using one browser, it works, and if you're using another browser, it might not work. Or if you're using your phone, it might not work, depending on what technology was serving that web page to you. That sucks, right? That's not good, right? Every modern day application server that gives you web pages, every web server, right, uses something called Apache HTTP, an open source code inside. Every modern day cloud infrastructure, except one, uses OpenStack inside, right? Or will use OpenStack inside. IBM certainly uses OpenStack inside. So it's important that you ask your vendors to build their clouds on open technologies, from how you interact, mobile first, social, build on HTML5, right? To how you build your applications, with things like Cloud Foundry in a polyglot way. My polyglot answer over here, it made me so happy, right? Open services within your polyglot environment, Mongo, messaging, things like that, you know. An open infrastructure using OpenStack. Open network with things like Open Daylight, right? And open hardware with things like Open Power, right? Top to bottom. I know I said a lot. There's a lot of nuances in what I said, but just the messages from top to bottom in your cloud, make sure it's open. So, obviously in IBM we have products. Maybe we do sell stuff. And just to make things a little bit clear, when it comes to cloud, we allow you to build your own cloud internally in your data centers if you like. There's a lot of folks who do that. In fact, there's lots of good reasons to do that. People call that private cloud, right? In the private. Why is that important? Well, you have the ultimate responsibility of making sure you have the right quality of services. You have data protection, compliance. There's lots of reasons for doing that. And sometimes you also need to make sure that certain clusters in your cloud perform. Okay, you know, we're dealing with real transactions, right? Perform at a certain way. So we've got expert systems for doing that, things like pure systems and pure applications. So think of it as hardware and software in a box. But also, you might want to extend outside of your enterprise. Some applications which aren't transactional in nature, some that perhaps have different security requirements, some that have just different reasons for not living in your, you can go to SoftLayer, which is our public cloud, right? Or, I'll say this, right? Or use our competitors, because they're built on open technologies. It'll be much easier for you to move across clouds. Or if you're unhappy with a competitor who's using open technologies, come to us, and we're happy to help you. So, when you think about your journey in cloud, right, spend your time working with the business to think it. Think about the impact of mobile, the why. This is the why. Your business folks, why do I need mobile? Well, because the world is changing. You better get on board, guys. All right? Get your little flux capacitor, go back into time, and go forward into time and realize that the world's changing. Mobile, social. You need to leverage big data and analytics for competitive advantage. The Internet of Things is a reality. It's happening, right? That's the why, right? You need to build it, right? That's the how, right? Use cloud as that flexible infrastructure. And I think I've, ad nauseam, made the case for an open cloud from top to bottom, right? And then, of course, you need to tap into it, right? That's the execution part, right? Deliver differentiated value to your clients, because vision without execution is, over here, hallucination. So with that, I'm done. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be around if you have any questions. Happy to talk to you.
Video coverage of IT Expo is brought to you by Content Boost, the content marketing specialists. Amplify your sales today.